Hello everyone. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at adding units and simplifying tasks in mission design using Lua. Now, Lua is one of those topics that I could get very, very serious, and I could literally have my own YouTube channel dedicated to Lua inside of Command. But I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible for today's applications, as well as show you some kind of quick and easy ways to kind of add a little bit of extra to the missions that you're building. So first things first, what I've done is I've gone ahead and created myself this boring little airfield. It's just kind of northwest here of Vegas. You can see that here, and obviously you got your Hoover Dam and everything. Fallout, New Vegas veterans will probably recognize that region, as well as my DCS folks who know the NTTR. And again, if I zoom in far enough, you can actually see this airfield just kind of chilling here. So what I want to do today is show you some different ways to use the add unit command in Command in order to make your life a little bit simpler. So first things first, I'm going to go to Editor. I'm going to go down to Lua Script Console. You can see I was playing with it a little bit earlier, kind of experimenting. So first things first, if you're interested in getting started with Lua, you want to go find this website. This is the Command Lua website. If you go on Google and literally type in Command Lua, it'll be the first thing that pops up. You're going to notice that it's broken into functions, and it's broken into wrappers, and it has tables and selectors, and it looks like a crazy amount of information. It's not as bad as it looks, but there are a lot of quirks, which make it something that you can't get good at quickly. It takes a lot of effort to basically get the hang of it. That being said, you can do some amazing things with it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So let's say I want to add a unit somewhere on the map. Again, we're going to do it the hard way, then we're going to do it the easy way, then we're going to do it the cool way. So first things first, if this were normal, I could press the insert key, I could left click, I could go ahead and slap down a unit. For example, if I wanted to put, let's say an SA9 just for fun, we'll say Syria, boop, good to go. Now, that works pretty well for facilities, and it works pretty well for ground units, because all I can do is place them. If I choose to move it, I can hit the M key, move it any which way I want. Works pretty good. Now, if I wanted to add myself an aircraft, let's go ahead and get myself an F5E. Whoops. Force of habit. Let's go ahead and get one of these stacked ones, and we'll go ahead and say throw a Sidewinder, plop it in the middle. That works pretty well. You know, if we want to move that one around, we can do that as well. But notice that it's going to be at a fixed speed, it's going to be at a fixed altitude, and it's going to have this kind of boring name. As a matter of fact, if I wanted to copy and make a lot of these, they're all going to have exactly the same name and the exact same properties and the exact same heading, and it's not going to work very well. As a matter of fact, if I wanted to fill up an entire airbase with those, I'm going to end up basically having to use Control F6. Then I'm going to have to come in here and add and find the same unit node. It's going to get a little crazy, and it's going to look canned is the word I usually will say. So what we're going to do is we're going to go find the add unit command under Lua. And here's the general syntax for it. It's pretty straightforward. So what I can do is I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste this real quick, make my life a little bit simpler. Come over here and paste that sucker in. Now the way commands work in Command Lua, that sounds weird, is the fact that you will have different properties. You'll have strings, you'll have tables, you'll have wrappers, you'll have selectors, and all these crazy different elements that's going to be going into a function. You have to make sure they're all named correctly, they're the correct case, they're the correct numbers. If it's a quote, again, all these things you're going to have to figure out on your own. But let's go ahead and break down the add unit command on our own. So first things first, when you're adding a unit using Lua, you have to define the type of unit. You can be air, you can be facility, you can be submarine, you could be a ship. Next, you want to always give the unit a name. This is really, really critical. Next, you want to do the loadout ID. So if this is an aircraft, it's going to have a loadout ID. In this particular case, if you're looking for the specific loadout ID, I could come in here and do F15C. We'll just pick this one randomly, and your loadout IDs are going to be in the loadouts themselves. It's going to be this number right over here on the right-hand side. The database ID, by the way, which is next, is going to come right over in the top left corner here. Don't get your loadouts in your database confused. You could have some pretty funny issues. You always have to define a side. You always have to define a lat, which is just latitude. Again, latitude is going to be up and down, and longitude, which is going to be left and right. In this particular case, this is far, 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 far away for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my mouse here. I'm going to fix up our latitude and longitude here. Looks like we're at 3746, which is, we'll just say 37, again, positive is going to be north. 46 is going to be something about 0.75. And longitude, obviously, we're going to be negative because we're in the west here. That's going to be 116. And let's see, 46 is about 75 also. And, of course, we have our altitude of 5,000. I'll go ahead and run that. And if there is an issue, you will automatically get an error message here. In this case, it says I have no matching element. You know why? because we never set it to be the side that we actually created on our actual mission. Go ahead and run that again, and ta-da! Oh, look at how close I was. That's a pretty quick estimation. No, I did not cheat. But you can see I've created a unit, and it has an altitude of 16,404. What? Well, the reason for that is because altitudes are in meters. If you want it to be in feet, you have to actually put it inside quotes like that. So let me go ahead and delete that unit, run it again. Now if I click on him, check it out. He's 5,000 feet. You're sitting there going, he's not 5,000 feet. And the reason why is because the local altitude is so low, he'd be inside of the ground. So let's try 12,500 feet. Let's do that again. Left click on him. Ta-da! That's pretty cool. So what other things can you do when you create a unit with this? Well, if you take a look at the one above, we can set things like proficiency, we can set auto detectability, we can tell it to hold fire, we can even identify its proficiency. But guess what? This is just the start. If you actually were to go over to the wrappers and go to unit, this is a list of all the things you can add. Take a look at this. We could set speed, we could set throttle. Again, let's have some fun with speed here. Let's see, comma, speed equals, let's see what's pretty fast. We'll do 750, seems pretty quick. So now if I run this again, I have a much faster moving. Notice it automatically ceilinged because I can't actually go faster than that at this altitude. So if I were to come up here, for example, and set this to, let's do 45,000 feet, delete it, run it again, check it out. We can now go to 750 knots. It automatically fixes the goofiness that we always put inside these scenarios. So already, this is really cool. I could come in here and say proficiency equals 4. Let's make this guy like the Red Baron here. Now, if I click on him, you'll notice this aircraft is now an ace. So hopefully you see just how powerful this is. Now, you're probably sitting here going, well, I could do most of that just by right-clicking and going through the menus, and you'd be absolutely 100% correct, which is why this functionality is only useful if you're going to apply what I like to say, the computer science hacker way of kind of solving things. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this unit here. Now, what if we wanted to fill this airfield up with F-15s? Okay. Can we somehow build in what base they're at? Absolutely. If you actually go back to the wrapper here, you'll notice there's an option for base and there's another option for host unit. So in this case, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and say, we'll get rid of the latitude and longitude and altitude and speed because we're not going to need any of those because we're using a base, right? We're typing base equals airfields. Don't forget, if it is a string, it's got to be in quotes or apostrophes. And we'll say host unit equals airfield. All right, F-I-E-L-D. Boop. Make sure I'm still inside my little quotes. Run it. Let's see if it worked. Ta-da! So now I've added an F-15 to this airbase. And again, you can sit here and define each one of the individual loadouts. So far you're probably sitting here going, okay, so this is pretty straightforward. Blow me away. All right, let's do it. So one of the things I like to do here, we don't need to be doing manual targeting here. Let me go ahead and remove that guy real quick. Is let's say I want to fill this airfield up with randomly named, randomly numbered, randomly proficient aircraft. Now we're getting serious, and that's going to bring us to iteration. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up here and I'm going to go ahead and give myself a little bit of space. So I'm going to create a variable that keeps track of the item that I'm currently selecting. So the good news is I'm just going to left click on him real quickly. I'm going to say local, which simply says the variable I'm creating here is going to be a variable I'm only using in this function. Airbase equals. All right, we need a function in here that's going to go ahead and get selected units for us. So let's see here. Anything say the word select? There it is. Go ahead and insert that really quickly. And I'm going to use the print command to show you what finds. Watch this. All right, so if you take a look here, it printed out this thing, units. This is actually a table is what you're looking at. That's what the curly brackets are for. You'll notice it has inside of its table another table called units. The first item in this table is item 1, which has these properties, which is another table. Yikes. So we're just interested in this piece right here. So let's go ahead and get that. So there's a bunch of different ways we could do that. First of all, we could come over here and type in .units. Remember how this one's called units? So now if I run it, it's going to say the word nil. Now you're probably sitting there going, why is it saying the word nil? The reason is because of the capital letter. So check it out. We're now only getting the table of units that I've selected. Well, that's cool. Can we get the only unit that I'm selecting? Sure, I could just say bracket 1. So what I'm saying here is, get me all the selected units, which in this case is this one. Get me the table out of those selected units, because you can also have contacts, and then get me the first item from that table, and then display it here. Let's try it out. Beautiful. Look at that. Now here's where people get in trouble. What you're seeing here is two things. You're seeing the name of the thing I'm selected, and you're seeing its GUID, which is just unique. Think of it as a serial number if you want to do it another way. This is not going to have properties that we're going to need. As a matter of fact, this is literally just a table with a word and another set of words. What we need to do is get the properties of the item that we actually did. And lucky for us, there's a function for that as well. So I'm going to say airbase equals send edit get unit. And now we have to define what unit we're interested in. So in this case, I'm going to say name equals airbase.name. We'll go ahead and print out the airbase now. Watch this. Boop. Now we've got all of the properties. Look at this. I'll keep adding F15s to it, don't I? Come on, guys. You're supposed to shout at the screen so I can hear you when you do that. Let's go ahead and cancel that out for a second. So now I have all the properties of this beautiful, wonderful airfield. Excellent. So that means we can do cool things like this. We can come down to send edit add unit. And again, remember how we had base and host unit? We can now say base equals airbase.name. And we can now say host unit equals airbase.name. So now if I run this again, it's going to add that unit to the airbase that I've selected as opposed to a specifically named airbase. So if I had a situation, again, I don't know why I'd have this situation, but you never know. Again, I don't design your missions. You guys do these. I can now click on this one, run my code, and now I've actually added aircraft to the other airbase. Now, of course, if you do something silly like not click on an airbase when you run this, for example, let's grab that radar. Oh, I've selected a radar. Watch what happens. Womp, womp. You're going to get an error because you can't add units to a radar. Now, can you do this with grouped airbases? Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons it's so cool. So far, so good. Hopefully this is making some sense to you. And now we're going to get cool. Now, what if I wanted to add more than one airplane at a time? Now we're getting into the computer sciencey hackery solution. So what I'm going to go ahead and do this time is I'm going to bring in some iteration. Now, there's two basic ways you can do a loop. Actually, there's more than two. I gotcha. Again, I'm not going to go too far here. There's a definite loop and an indefinite loop. Basically, if you're doing a definite loop, it has a definite starting point and ending point. An indefinite loop is going to be a loop that keeps looping until something happens to tell it not to do that anymore. I'm going to use a definite loop. So I'm going to type in the word for. So a for loop basically is going to let us define the starting value, the ending value, and how much we should increment. So for example, I'm going to create a generic variable called x, and I'll set it equal to 1, comma, stop at the number 10, comma, and increase by 1. And then I'm going to type in the word do. After this, I'm going to go ahead and type in end. So what does this do? This creates a variable called x, assigns it a value of 1, loops through all of this until it reaches the number 10. Each time it loops, it increases x by 1. So after this goes through 1, x will be 2, x will be 3, x will be 4, x will be 5, x will be 6. So theoretically, if I now run this code, it should add a unit to this airfield 10 times. Ta-da! Isn't that awesome? That is so cool. So this is just getting started. And again, we can have a lot more fun with this, which is what we're going to do now. So one of the things I love using these functions for is for the purposes of going ahead and creating different sorts of functions that can basically rename things or set the proficiency using random numbers. And we're going to do that next. So whenever we're working with any sort of things that are going to be changing each time, I always like to put them in my own private variable. So let's go ahead and do that first. So I'm going to say local, again, local variable, plane name equals, I don't know, we'll call it F15. We'll keep it nice and boring. And let's go ahead now, see where it says unit name. And I'm going to go ahead and delete the F15. I'm going to say equals plane name. So what I'm doing is replacing that string with the string I've created up here. So now if I run it again, you'll see that the plane name is F15. I know, wonderfully exciting, right? So we'll go ahead and remove those real quick. Now, can I take advantage of this variable that I keep incrementing every time I lower around? Sure. In Lua, if you want to combine two strings together, you do two periods next to each other. And now I can write X. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying take the word F15 and concatenate, which is just adding two strings together, the number X, which of course is, like I said, it starts at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as time goes on. I'll go ahead and put a space bar. I'll run the script again. Look at that. That's so cool. So this is already getting kind of useful if you ask me. And again, that means you can name things if you're doing interceptor 4 or whatever you'd like to do. So I'm just getting warmed up here. Oh, can we randomize the proficiency? Yeah, I like that. So I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call this prof. And we're going to use a function called math.random. So in this case, I want to randomize a number between 0 and 4. So now it's going to randomly generate a proficiency. I'll copy that. Let's go ahead proficiency and replace that with prof. It's going to generate a number between 0 and 4 and then use that number for the unit's proficiency. Boop. So this is not going to be obvious, so I'll go here. And you can see I now have a rainbow of different proficiencies at that airbase. Now, some of you are saying, whoa, 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 whoa. Can we make it so there's a minimum proficiency? Sure, just do the math. Let's do a number between 1 and 4, or 0 and 3, I should say. But we'll add 1 to it. So now when I run it, we're not going to have any newbies, but we're definitely going to have a pretty good split of everybody else. And you can see that clearly by the new sets of colors and new proficiencies that you have. You can already see how you're sitting there going, oh, you could do an entire carrier air wing and everybody's got a dynamic proficiency. Yeah. So let's go too far with this, right? So let's take advantage of what if it was a randomly named or numbered F-15. So those of you who know how aircraft are numbered in the United States would probably know it usually starts with 2 digits referring to what year the airplane was made, and then 3 digits after a dash, of course, basically defining which number of the batch it is. So for example, if this particular set of F-15s were made in 1979, it would be 79 dash. So I'll do math.random. Give me a number between 100 and 999. Let's go ahead and give that a try. Hey, and now you have neatly, like almost authentically numbered airplanes that you can go ahead and use for this particular scenario. Now, if you wanted to say that planes were between 1979 and 1981, you could do that too. You could say math.random, let's say 79 to 81, don't forget the dash, and let's go ahead, well actually let's clean everybody out. There's so many F-15s at this airbase, I don't know what's up with that. All right, go ahead and run it again, check this out. So now I have 79s, 80s, and 81 F-15s at this airbase. Now, if you wanted to go too far, of course, you could come in here and set it up so that the different aircraft have different pilot qualities. I mean, why would you give the good pilot the old plane or something like that? So again, you can have a lot of fun with this. So can you go even further with this? Absolutely. Let's do it. So in Russia, typically, aircraft were randomly numbered and colored in order to confuse the heck out of Western intelligence. It actually works really, really well. So let's say we want to simulate that for a second. So we'll have red, blue, and let's say yellow. And we wanted to randomly pick one of those colors and then randomly stick a number on the back of it just to confuse the heck out of the poor person playing the scenario. Oh, I got red number 45. Yeah, but there's a red 42. There's a red 99. Oh no, how many reds are there? Let's go ahead and take a look at that too. So to do that, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sow local dice. And I'm going to go ahead and give myself a random number between 1 and 3. And then all I have to do now, it looks pretty good here. We'll then say if dice equals 1, 2 equals, then plane name equals, actually we want to be a little bit careful here. Plane name looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and again, for the initial plane name, I'm just going to leave it blank. Local plane name equals plane. I always like to declare my variables. So plane name equals red, math.random, and we'll say 1 to 99. Else, if dice equals 2, then plane name equals blue, math.random, 1 to 99, and we could say else if dice equals 3, then plane name equals yellow. Don't forget the space. Math.random. 1 to 99. We'll do end. Looks good. Run. Whoopsies. Which line is that? That is line 14. Ah, there it is. Womp womp. All right, we got a 19. Let's see, is it else if? Or is it elif? I think it was else if. Ah, my bad. Check it out. So now I have blue planes, red planes, and yellow planes randomly numbered for your inconvenience. That's pretty cool, right? So this little dice method can also be used to equip aircraft with different loadouts. So I could come up here and say local random loadout equals math.random, and I could say 1 or 2. It's basically flipping a coin at that point. And then I could come down here and I could say if random loadout equals 1, then what do we have? Yeah, random loadout. Loadout. Actually, it's very dangerous. We should never do it that way. Let me clean that out. I'm sorry. My apologies. Local. Actually, we'll leave that up at the top. Local load equal. Oh, don't say load. I'm going to say plain loadout equals, what is the one we used before? 16934. There we go. There we go. Let's go clean this up. So then we could say if math.random equals math random between 1 and 2 equals 1, then sorry about that, plain loadout equals 16934. Else plain loadout equals, I believe it is loadout 1. Give me half a second just to check that real fast. Let's see here, F15C. It doesn't matter which one I grab. I just need the top loadout name. It is maintenance loadout 4. Else loadout 4, meaning they're in the hangar. So then I can come down here where it says loadout ID, and I can just change this with plain load out. Let's go ahead and try it out. Oh, let's clean out that error. Just run it. It'll be fine. Whoop, got a syntax error. There we go. Space my code out. Everything's getting a little complicated. Take a look, and look at that. So now we have random aircraft that are actually in maintenance. Now, one of my favorite ways to do this even better, let me go ahead and clean everybody out. There's a lot of F-15s at this space. What's up with that? So one of the cool ways to actually play with this is I can change the variability. Let's say that 1 in 3 planes is available. I can say math.random 1 to 3 equals 1, then you're loaded. Else, you're stuck at maintenance. So if I run this, mathematically, I should get about a third of the 10 planes, which is mathematically almost perfect. So the technique worked really, really well. Now, if you're a country, for example, that half of your planes are going to be ready at any given time, you could always go inside there. Let me go clean that up real quick. Run that again. And now you can see roughly half of the planes are randomly available with that particular loadout. Isn't that incredible how effective that works? So that's, again, one of the reasons why I love using Lua in order to make my missions a little bit more interesting. So do we stop there? The answer is no. Well, we're actually having a lot of fun with this. What if we wanted to set something up so that I had a certain number of units arcing around another unit? Okay, I think we can work that out. So let me go ahead and delete all this stuff. And I'm going to I'll delete all this stuff. So I'm going to be careful. I'll call it local samdb ID equals. Let's get ourselves a SAM. Again, this is just going to make it a little bit more readable. Facility, let's see here. We'll do an SA9, something nice and boring. That looks good. 381. Lovely. And we'll say local dist equals, we'll say 10 nautical miles. And that looks pretty good. All right, cool. So now we're going to use local bearing equals, let's say 45 degrees, and we're great and we're ready to go. So let's go ahead and create a new unit here. And this time we're going to use a special command in order to offset that unit. So I'm going to go ahead and create my add unit table. And I'm going to go ahead and say local new position equals, and now we're going to use a special function down here at the bottom under tools that says get right there. Get point from bearing. Watch this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say latitude equals the airbase's latitude. The longitude will equal the airbase's longitude. the distance will equal 10, the bearing will equal 45. So this function, well, let me go ahead and clean this out real quick, will actually go ahead and grab a new position based on the details that I give it here. Let's go ahead and print out that new position because I want you to see what this looks like before we try to use it for something. Nil. Now you're probably sitting there going, why did it say nil? Let me show you why that said nil. The reason why is because we didn't give it the correct syntax. And this is why it is so incredibly important that whenever you're doing any of these functions, you always double check to see exactly what they're going to give you. So in this case, its distance equals this. Latitude looks good. Airbase.latitude, airbase.longitude. I'm going to go back and check it real quickly. Latitude equals, distance equals 12, bearing equals 90. Distance equals 10, bearing equals 45, which makes no sense. So I'm just taking a look at this real quick. We printed the new position. Did I spell it correctly? No. I need to call that positon. Run. Much better. Of course, this time we actually want to use distance equaling dist, and we want to say bearing equals bearing. Actually, it's very dangerous. Let's call that bear. Let's go ahead and call this one bear as well. Go ahead and run that real quick. Beautiful. Okay, excellent. So now we're able to get a position. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and use our senEdit real quick. And inside of our senEdit, we can go ahead and define exactly what we want to do as far as setting that up. So we'll go ahead and say name, just like we did before. We'll call it a SAM site. We'll say dbid equals SAM dbid. Latitude, don't forget side. Type equals facility. Side equals red. Latitude equals new position dot latitude. Longitude equals new position dot longitude. And I'm just double checking to make sure we didn't miss anything kind of obvious here. I've got a name for it. No, I think I'm good. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Bingo! And now we have a brand new SAM site ready to go up there at the top into something along those lines. Now, you're probably sitting there going, well, that was pretty cool. I like that. Can we go too far? Oh, heck yes, we can go too far. Let's get our loop back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new loop. I'm going to go ahead and start at 0. I'm going to end at 360, and I'm going to increment by 18. I think you can see where I'm going here. I'm going to go ahead and grab all this stuff, put this in here. I like these two, but I'm actually going to leave that one. We don't need bear anymore, believe it or not. You're probably going, uh-oh, what is he doing? I'm liking that, I'm liking that, I'm liking that. Cool. But this time for, oh, hang on. Got carried away. Let's grab this. We do need this one. Let's go ahead and change the word bear to the word X. Now you're going, okay, what are you doing? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my X at 0, increment it by 18, and treat that as the bearing. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a new unit there. So let's go ahead and delete that, zoom out a little bit. Snap. Uh-oh. I forgot to left click on the unit, my bad. Snap. Look at that. So now I've gone ahead and created a perfectly shaped ring around my little airfield here of SA9s of Doom. Of course, you could come in here and set random proficiency, but watch how quick this is. I can come up here now and set the distance to 20, and then I can say, I actually want 9. Look at that. Of course, we can go a little excessive here. If you'd like to go a little excessive, I could do 30, and I can increment by 2. Come get some. That is a lot of SA9s. I think that's the entire inventory of the Air Force and the Army combined sitting there just guarding this little airfield. But hopefully that is just a really, really slick way that you can go ahead and use that for that function. Now remember, this works for ships. This works for aircraft. This works for absolutely everything. Yeah, there you go. Now I've got half an arc. Everything you could ever want it to know, just taking advantage of these simple functions. And again, trying to make your life a little bit easier as far as trying to build missions. For me, the big one is randomly placing units on the ground. You can do stuff like that. Filling up airfields with random units. Now, if you're a real pro, what you'll actually do is randomly generate everything every time you start the scenario. Doing something like that is a little tricky. Basically, what you'd have to do is under the event editor, let's go down to event editor, we'll go to events, you create a new event, and again, mission start is pretty class, or mission init, make sure it's not repeatable. And what we could do is we could actually add a trigger. We could say, let's see here, scenario has loaded. Then we could add that in there like that. Edit conditions. Scenario has started. Yup. Or yep in my case. That's what my doggy does. And then we could come down here and we could go ahead and create a Lua script. Spawn units. And then we go ahead and have ourselves, when we start the scenario each time, it will actually fire that script that we just developed moments earlier, which is, again, a spectacular way to make missions a little bit more dynamic. Now, one thing I will point out too is if you're looking in here, you probably notice there's a thing for mission. You can actually assign the mission of the unit that you are using in a particular point here. And again, there's a million different ways to do it. You can set the type of mission, you can create the mission first, you can define the group, and all these features are now here. Something to watch out for. Some of these items you're going to see the word read only. That means when you go to create them, you may not be able to edit these functions. A lot of things like with magazines is very difficult to do. You have to use another function for that, but that is getting way beyond where we want to be taking a look at today. So hopefully this has been a little bit helpful as far as how to enhance things. I'm not going to print a big thing of scripts, although one thing I will say, and this works really well, is I like to keep a library of all the scripts I develop as time goes on in order to make my life a little bit simpler so that I can always just go back and get something. Again, you can actually create dynamic libraries if you needed it. And again, you can see that I love using random elements. You can see that I like to use different things, using repeat functions and everything like that, setting up the weather. These are all great little scripts that, again, if you can pause YouTube real quick, you can probably steal some of them. You can see me using some names. You can see me using some titles, everything along those lines. Again, take a look at my missions if you're looking for specific examples. Other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them at the bottom. I will not call myself a Lua expert because I am not, but at the very least, I know how to use it to make my missions a little bit more interesting. Enjoy.